Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of After Dark Chat. I'm really excited, and I am Chadwick Clark, the Learning and Development Specialist here at ACCHO. But let's kick things start, and let me take you on a journey, a quick journey. So let's take a moment and imagine the clock striking midnight while the moon casts its glow of spell and you happen to be drawn to the screens of your smart devices, unlocking a portal to go beyond your wildest imagination, where taboos are dismantled and authentic discourse flow like the rivers of moonlight. What birthed the concept of After Dark, people might ask, or what does it truly mean? It happens to be the innovation of the African Caribbean Council of HIV/AIDS in Ontario, ACCHO, a social media series designed to tackle some of the misconceptions surrounding subjects such as HIV, sex, stigma, HIV prevention, treatment and care, and sexuality. In other words, it's all taboo topics that we will be talking about this evening. In effect, to break down the walls of discrimination and promote sexual reproductive health, we want to ignite a discussion that will help to bring awareness. After Dark Chat will be a transformative experience. So let's get engaged. Let us tune in. Let us share this live to our friends, our family, our loved ones. And by supporting this program, you will be morphed into a beacon of change and a champion of open conversation that will seek to break barriers. Together, we will be empowering the African, Caribbean, and Black community to educate and to reduce stigma and discrimination surrounding HIV/AIDS, sexuality, and conventional sexual topics. So, viewers, fasten your seatbelts. Sit back for this journey of After Dark Chat, where we will be discussing this evening the wonders of open relationship. Please note that the views and opinions expressed here are solely of the participants and not necessarily the views or position of ACCHO. I am really excited, and so I am going to invite. And so let me just quickly accept them so we can start the robust discussion. So let me go ahead and accept. Hey, Jamaica.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We're good, Garfield.
Hi, how are you hearing me?
I am.
You're sounding a bit
I can
low,
see y'all.
but it's my
Okay,
first live actually. My very first live. Huh?
welcome, folks. Welcome. I am really happy to see everyone. And so we'll jump right into it just to introduce yourself. So I'll start with the lovely person in purple. Go right ahead.
Hey, y'all, my name is Jamaica. I use they, them pronouns. I'm an actual strategy worker at the AIDS Committee of Durham Region. So my work focuses on Black, African, and Caribbean communities. And I'm super excited to delve into this juicy topic tonight.
All right, cool. And we'll go to Garfield. Over to you.
All right, good stuff. So I'm Garfield Durand. I'm the Men's Prevention Specialist Lead here at the Black Coalition for AIDS Prevention, Black CAP. My role basically focuses on the delivering prevention interventions for African Caribbean Black men, including those who identify as gay, bi, and other men who have sex with men. I'm also passionate about working with this community, and also just really excited to have this conversation today. I'm also a strategy worker. GMSH, I'm an actual strategy worker and also a GMSH worker. So I wear two hats. So coming here is like an opportunity for me to sort of be part of the conversation, but also to hear the community's perspective on this really important topic.
Thank you so much for sharing and introducing. And so the boss, who is our special guest tonight. Over to you. Tell us about yourself.
So hi everyone, my name is Natasha Lawrence, aka Love.
Woo!
My pronouns are she, her, and Natty, and I am a pleasure and sexual health educator. I came into this work through working in community, doing a lot of HIV prevention work for Black women, femmes, non-binary, trans folks, etc. Working with adults, youth, just a variety of different groups. And specifically, I have a deep love for my African, Caribbean, and Black community. And I'm here to, just to continue to dispel any myths, any misconceptions, to not just talk about sexual health from a perspective of the prevention and treatment of illnesses, but to also talk about all the different nuances that come along with sexual health, and always including that pleasurable aspect to it. So I'm really happy to be here and to be a part of this After Dark chat. I got a little jazzed up,
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm quite excited to be a part of this.
Thank you so much. I am excited, a little bit, on edge, because I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what our community members are going to come with. What a really engaging topic that we have. It is open relationship. And the question is, do you believe or do you practice monogamous relationship or non-monogamous? And so to set the stage and to get all the definitions and all the different aspects around open relationship, I'm going to turn over to Boss Natty. And so she'll be setting the stage and just enlightening everybody of what this topic is about and how we in the Black community, how we can relate to that. So over to you again, Natty.
Yeah, so when we're talking about open relationships, you may hear a lot of different ways in which open relationships are referred to. In particular, non-monogamous relationships being the branch of all the different ways that folks can practice some form of openness in their relationships. So some folks are familiar with people will hear the term polygamy. That's usually the first one that comes to folks' minds. That's a very particular form of non-monogamy. It's the marriage to multiple spouses. Polyamory is when a person can have multiple loves, and that can look quite different. So that's the main difference I wanted to put out there, because folks oftentimes group polygamy into group everything into polygamy when that's a very specific type of non-monogamy. So let's focus on polyamory and all the different ways that it can show up in that way. So some of those ways could be through hierarchical relationships, usually meaning that there is a partner, like a partner that's together, and they consider themselves to be, think of a hierarchy, right? Think of that hierarchical structure. The partners are at the top of the relationship, and then they have secondary, they may have both or either one or may have secondary relationships outside of that. We have solo polyamory, which is folks usually who practice solo polyamory may say something like, my primary partner is myself. So there's no hierarchy in any of their relationships. All of their relationships are pretty much considered secondary relationships, and they themselves will be the primary in that relationship. You have triads and quads, right? So that's, or thruples, right? So that's 3 folks in one relationship or 4 people in one relationship. You may have dynamics in your non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships where you may have interactions where all of the partners interact together. There's a term called kitchen table polyamory. So think about it. It's you, your partner, your partner's partners, and your partner's partners, and you're all together around the kitchen table, kicking and having a good time. So there's folks who may have those dynamics, and there's folks who may have the dynamics where it's quite closed off, where they do not want their partner necessarily intermingle. So it really is up to the person's capacity in terms of what their non-monogamous relationship looks like. The most important thing is that these relationships should be ethical. They should be consensual, meaning that everyone is a as a willing participant. Everyone knows what's happening. Everyone understands the structure in which the relationship that they're in, and that there's a constant flow of communication, and knowing that things can change over time. So the way in which you may have entered that polyamorous relationship may look completely different. The needs and wants of the partner may shift over time. So having that open and constant communication is one of the key things to a non-monogamous relationship. And then you have, like, you know, other structures like swingers. You know, you and your partner may go out and you go to a play party, and you know, you go out and you have a good time at the play party, right? And you see another couple that you like, oh, I'm gonna hook up with that couple. You see another person that you like, oh, I'm gonna hook up with that person. You know, there's so many different ways in which folks can practice. Like, I would take up this whole life. One in detail. And, you know, the definitions may look a little bit different for folks who are practicing, because, again, you may have your own negotiations and arrangements within that polyamorous relationship on how you want it to look like. For example, some folks may want a lot of open communication, constant open communication about other partners. Some folks may not want that. There may be don't ask, don't tell dynamics, right? Where they're like, I don't need to know, just do this thing and this thing and this thing, and I don't need to know anything else. So it really just depends on the person, their capacity, the things that they find that are important to them in their relationship, and how they want to interact in that relationship, or relationships, plural. So that's a little quick 101.
All right.
That's a whole encyclopedia.
All right, so we are going to turn our direction to our community members. And so we're going to ask anybody, because it's really about you sharing your experience. And so we are going to turn our attention to the community members and to find out if anybody wants to join and share their experience. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have like two parts. I'm going to kick Jamaica off, right? Free up a space.
We need you back.
And then I will actually look in the request and see if we have anybody there that would like to share. Right. All right. Let me see. I'm seeing a request here. So, all right. So,
Who do we have now? Who's this person?
Hi guys.
Hi.
My name is Nick Collin. My name is Nick. I'm a trans harm reduction peer worker. Yeah, I would love to answer a couple of your questions today.
All right, so I think I have a couple of questions. I think I would want to kind of, because based on what Jamaica just shared, like a whole list of not Jamaica, the host again. What's your name again? Natty Love. What Natty Love just shared a while ago, in terms of the whole terms, like there's a whole lot, and some of them are also new to me. I've been, doing community work for a while, and also like in my own personal life, like we don't have all those terms, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I would want to know, what do you think are the benefits and challenges of open relationship, and what do you think that monogamous or polygamous relationships? Give me a little bit more context in terms of your knowledge based on that as well.
Honestly, when it comes to polyamorous relationships, versus with monogamous, that whole just ideology kind of throws me off sometimes, because I believe that people are capable of loving more than one person, if that's within their heart and within their will and their mind, regardless of religious beliefs or, you know, social constructs outside of that. I believe people should live the way they want to, and that should be something that's followed through all aspects outside of gender, and like how you present yourself is also the way you live. So personally, I don't really have that view where it's like, I don't know, not even to come off like strange, but some people do have that view where it's like, oh, you're with more than one person? Like that's odd, or they have that negative side to it. I'm just kind of like, that's cool. I think that's great that you're able to spread your love in so many different ways. And in terms of knowing kind of like how it's an umbrella term, because there's so many parts and categories to it that I wasn't even aware of, honestly. Even when she mentioned them, I was like, wow, that's a lot. But it's cool to see all the different ways that people can express themselves when it comes to romance and sexuality. I think it's really cool.
But really think that, truly you can love more than one person at the same time? Like, is that really realistic?
Yeah, because think about your family. You love them all. If you don't, I just love my mom, I just love my dad. No, you love your mom, your sister, your uncle, regardless of grudges or, negative stuff that comes with family sometimes and toxicity, like there's still that threshold,
Mm-hmm.
which proves that you can love more than one person in all aspects.
Nick, you said when you joined that you are a trans man, right? Is it
Yes.
hard for you as a trans man to be in relationships in general? And I mean, what are your experience with that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I cut
So-
off a bit.
Okay, so what are your experience in going out and seeking relationships? So, or as a trans man, I mean, are there anything that other person needs to know? But just give us your take on it and your lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, personally, when I was single and, looking, or I wouldn't really say looking because at that point in my life, I was kind of just focusing on myself and just like seeing what life brought to me. I definitely found myself in a weird spot where I felt like I had to reveal everything, like about myself before I was even comfortable, for just in order to respect that person. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because with liking someone, there's sexuality preferences, and you could like someone physically by the way they look, but you know, if the sex is boring, I sometimes that changes things, and we have to like acknowledge that because we can't just confirm to one thing about a person if they don't meet all aspects and make us truly happy. That's what I believe. So it was definitely a point where I felt like I have to tell this person like what I am even before like I'm ready to come to terms with it myself because I was also very early on in my transition. So it was still something new and developing for me. So to explain it fully to someone was just kind of difficult at times, but also like something I had to do because out of respect. But it never really, fortunately, never really became an issue. More so because I found myself still in the pool of the LGBT community, and it's just a community where I feel comfortable, like a community where there's love in all aspects, in all corners, and no judgment. Like a lot of cisgendered people have very like negative views in terms of like relationships, and I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's a good majority. So it's definitely something you have to like tiptoe around, and not just cisgendered, like basically just like I would say straight cisgendered. There's a lot of beliefs that comes with that sometimes, especially depending on where they're from. That's a huge thing as well that I found, like going into family and sharing things about like, hey, like I met this guy and like they want to know more, but then it's like they also need to share that aspect about me. And it's also something that you gotta have to think about when you do date people as a transgender person. Is like it's not just gonna be, I guess, baggage for them. It's gonna be for their family, something they have to process too. And it's a very sensitive but gentle topic that needs to be addressed, but in a way that you're comfortable with. So I feel like that's more so the barrier that I faced within like dating and being a trans man.
Any questions for Nick?
Yeah,
Sorry?
I, I mean, I have one more for Nick, just a follow up. Sorry, Natty Love.
No, go
So these are so based on what Natty Love said earlier in terms of all the different terminologies. Are these common terms that are used in community, or there are other terms that community members use to sort of express the relationships that they're? Because based on the culture, you talk a little bit about culture. So I want to sort of
Yeah.
hear around the cultural responsiveness around like how are people using these terms, and what is the language they're using to describe these terms?
Well, personally, from what I've heard in my community and people that I know personally, I've mostly heard the term like polygamous, or I've heard once multi-amorous. I don't know if that's also a term, but just things like that. It was always polygamy or something along those lines. So I feel like that's one of the strongest use of those words because it's kind of like very versatile, very just I pick who I choose. We make our own agreements. We make our own like we confirm to things together. We agree together. So I would say that's probably the most popular one I've heard in all honesty. Yeah.
Hmm. And I think that you know, again, it brings up a good point around so a lot of these things are operating in various ways. Compulsory monogamy is definitely at play here. Compulsory, you know, cisnormativity, heteronormativity, all of these things are all at play here. And when I think about like the terms and the different ways in which we use them, because polyamory and any type of non-monogamous relationship tends to still be seen as taboo or not fully accepted within society, right? We oftentimes we don't get those pieces around the different terms and the different ways in which to explain. Because as I mentioned before, right, polygamy is really about the marriage of multiple spouses, right? Versus
Hmm.
marriage doesn't have to be involved at all. Polyamory is amorous, right? Think about amorous meaning love, like
Yeah.
literally about loving multiple people at one time, right? Um,
Hmm.
so, and I think you really brought up like some really great points because oftentimes these things are rooted because of compulsory monogamy. These things are rooted in these patriarchal views around relationships and around monogamous marriages, where once you get married, you two become one. You're that person is pretty much property, right? Whereas non-monogamy teaches us that we don't own other people. People are not our property,
Exactly.
right? Um, and as long as we are open and honest about how we're feeling, what's happening in the relationship, recognizing that jealousy is a thing no matter what, right? So whether you're in a monogamous relationship or a non-monogamous relationship, these are all things that you will have to navigate. So keeping that open communication there and being able to talk about things as they come along, and just learning and
Yep.
experiencing through the actual act of doing it, right? Is
Yeah, of course.
actually can kind of get themselves a little bit more familiar about certain terms. Folks don't even necessarily want to be open about the fact that they might practice polyamorous or non-monogamous relationships because of some fear of being, you know, discriminated against, judged, you know, experiencing any type of prejudice. Folks with multiple marginalized identities. The last thing that we want is more damn discrimination. Like, sit yourself over there with that, you know? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's sometimes that really drives a wedge and it drives that silence, you know. But I wanted to bring attention to some of the comments because I'm just loving the like the interaction and the engagement. You know, someone had mentioned that that was a really good comparison that you gave in terms of um, you can love multiple family members, right? You can love multiple friends. You may love them differently, but you still love them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so you can, in that aspect, you can love multiple romantic sexual partners. And I also don't want to leave out folks who are on the asexual scale because there are folks who are on the asexual scale who are also non-monogamous, right? So
Yeah.
whether platon, whatever that relationship looks like to you. So um, shout out to that. And then someone asked, Nick, Sean, Eric asked, is loving equally the same as loving equitably? And I really love that question. I would say no, right? Because we know that when it comes to equity, equity is about looking at the individual and seeing what their needs are. Not everyone is going to have the same needs. There's no such thing as, I know people often talk about, oh, relationships should be 50-50. Like, that's not necessarily a thing.
Yeah.
We all have like our
No.
strengths and things that we bring to the table and things that we kind of need a little bit of support. So one partner, the way how you need to the way how that relationship may look with one of your partners may look completely different with the other partner. And that doesn't mean that it's not that one partner is getting better treatment than the other. It's that if you're looking at it from an equitable standpoint, right? One partner may need other supports that look quite different than the other partner. So I really love the fact that they asked that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the engagement, everyone. This is really beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
No
Good.
problem, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. So we're gonna ask somebody else to just join and to share your story and what you practice in your relationship or your seek in finding a relationship. So, all right, Nick, later.
All right. See you guys.
Good.
Take care, Nick.
Okay. I also want to direct folks to the question symbol on the IG Live. So if folks have questions, they can always put it into that question symbol in there as well. But while the other person is joining, I just want to answer this question here. And of course, my friends who are here, please feel free to put your input into these comments and questions as well too. So the question is from Nick Sean Eric. How do you define a person who loves multiple people romantically, but chooses to have sex with only one person? Is it monogamy or polyamory? Well, I would say that could be polyamory from an asexual standpoint. There could be a mix of that on the asexuality scale, because again, polyamory is about multiple loves. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're necessarily having sex with everybody. You love can be expressed in a variety of different ways. So I would still consider that person to be polyamorous. Sexual attraction and romantic attraction are two different things. They don't have to both exist in the same space. Sometimes there can be just sexual attraction, or there can be just romantic attraction, or there can be just both. So just wanted to put that comment.
Nice. Welcome to our music member.
Who do we have here?
I'm also a trans harm reduction peer worker. And yeah, I'm loving the conversation so far. So glad to jump in.
It's good. It's good to have you. So I'll go with my next question. So do you think open relationships are becoming more accepted in society? And do you think that monogamy will always be a norm?
I think that definitely. I feel like cis hetero people are just like slow to the game. Like queer people been on just openly loving different people and being, kind to ourselves about that, and not necessarily pushing that off for the sake of one individual, but more so loving and accepting all. So by dominant society, sure, we can say that. But in terms of our my queer world, it just feels very normal. But yeah, and also like monogamy is just one type of relationship. Like if we keep considering things under this umbrella, all these types of relationships will always be types of relationships, no matter if it's monogamy, polyamory, or any other type of relationships. They're just types, and we'll always have them, and there'll be forever changing and evolving ones. And as long as we consider this as like its own subcategory of relationships, then we can just stop being so definite about things. It's just love, relationships, and how we navigate this world from birth to death.
I mean, that sounds all good and good, but also we think about the stigma that comes along with that. Like there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of misconception around, open relationships, whether in a monogamous or polygamous relationship. Like the stigma piece is what really creates a lot of barriers. And so what are your thoughts in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, stigma is there for so many different things. Like there's people that stigmatize Black folk for things that don't make any sense. And so if we like kind of connect with that kind of thought, then we understand that it's just something else that we have to navigate. I don't think that it should be a barrier to how we love or how we choose to love or how we show our love. I just think that it is a constant fight that we're always going to go through. And I think this is also a very unique fight because this is so personal and it's so deep within our own lives and our own personal lives and our own relationships. I think where it can be tricky is when we're talking about polygamy, where marriage is legal in different states or provinces, and how we navigate who's the next of kin. Oh, he's calling me. I'm trying to find it. In terms of that, then yeah, that's just like red tape. But yeah, stigma is always something that's gonna be there. But we just live in great, being black and beautiful, and we can continue to do that. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
After that.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, Shola, for your piece. Any questions from my co-host, or are we good? Natty, you.
No, I think you said that so like beautifully. You know, honestly, it's really just about there's so many different ways that folks can practice this, and if non-monogamy is not for you, that's fine. But you know, you do right, and don't push your own way of being in relationships on other folks, right? So there's so many different that folks, like you said, there's so many different lanes and so many different ways that folks can express themselves. So and that's a good point in terms of within the queer community, like, you know, we can feel a little bit more safe within our own community in how we may express that. There's still some stigma within the community that that we faced, right? But again, it's just how you navigate it. So I think even, you know, doing things like this and identifying people as potential safe spaces to be able to talk about non-monogamous relationships and have questions about that is one of the ways that we can help to dispel the stigma. So
even stigma within the community is so important too, because I think community dominant society, I think people like to project their own bad experiences with open relationships and then try and to further deep that into stigma and be like, well, this is why it's not good, and this is why, I mean, at least it won't work for me, and da. And those are things that are personal and is a personal attribute to your open relationships or your failed open relationships or your failed experiences. But when there is so little knowledge about open relationships and how people navigate that, anytime you hear something, you're gonna be like, oh shit, like I need to consider that the next time I think about being in an open relationship. But really, a lot of misinformation is out there, and we have to be very weary on how we navigate that information. And so many different things. Like the biggest thing that the human race struggles with is communication. And if you're going to be in a relationship, there's a lot of communication that needs to be there. So if you're struggling in communication in a monogamous relationship, then you're going to struggle in an open relationship. Like, that's just what's going to happen.
Yep.
So all these things have to be considered. Yeah.
So I'm going to put on my service provider's hat. I'm going to ask another question. So do you think if we develop a resource that will sort of give insight in terms of the different types of relationships that exist and how people navigate, potentially some, you know, some best practices in terms of navigating, you know, the forms of relationship or the type of relationships that exist? You think that community members would be receptive to that? Or you think that would be a great tool for people to sort of understand and to maybe have more comfortable conversations and also just being direct about their needs?
I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I think it's a good start as well. I also think it's like we need to continue to be innovative in the ways that we spread information. I think like TikTok is a growing social media platform, and I've seen quite a few creators talk about open relationships, and honestly, I get a lot of knowledge from TikTok, and I sit down there and I take notes and I save my videos to my collections and do all that type of stuff, and it's great. And I feel like if we continue to interact and engage with our community members like that, then it will grow. It just can't be this taboo thing where we open a pamphlet and talk about open relationships, because nobody's going to read that.
Yeah,
that's a good catch. Thanks.
Definitely very that. Yes.
Thank you so much, Shola, for sharing. We really, really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. All right. Natty, there is a question, I think, from Jace in the chat. Do you want to take that on while I see if I can add somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few questions. So, you know, the chat is popping and I'm loving it. I'm here for it. So there, you know, I did see some comments, you know, like some folks are saying, you know, they're too selfish for that, can't share, too. And you know what, again, that's totally fine, right? Like non-monogamy is not going to be for everyone, just like how monogamy is not for everyone. But there's a lot, I think, how we can dispel, again, like try to reduce some of the stigma, is to recognize that there's a lot that we can learn from each other. There's a lot that folks can learn from, that monogamous folks can learn from non-monogamous folks in terms of the communication piece. Because in my experience of open relationships, that's where my communication game actually went through the roof versus through the monogamous ones, right? And it doesn't necessarily always have to be that way, but again, like it is such a big thing, the open and constant communication. So there's a question, is the stigma there because of the risky behavior, or is it stigmatized because it's misunderstood? So, and I just want to put air quotes that the risky behavior, because there is this perception that if for folks who are in non-monogamous relationships that, oh, you know, they're engaging in risky sex and all kinds of things like that. And in my experience, not only as like a sexual health educator, but someone who has done like HIV testing in community, and has spoken to people about the different ways in which they engage in their sexual relationships. The folks who I have spoken to who are non-monogamous, they actually tend to have a lot of great, safer sex practices that they put into play. So for example, they may have a partner who, between them and their partner, they have decided that they don't use any barrier methods, but when they are engaging in sexual acts with other partners, then they will use barrier methods with other partners. So that could be a negotiation that they created in their relationship. They also may get tested every 3 months. So there's different ways in which they actually minimize a lot of the risks versus some folks. And again, this is not about a monogamy versus non-monogamy thing. It's not to pitch one against the other, right? It's just to kind of touch on some of these like misconceptions about non-monogamous people, right? Or folks who practice non-monogamy, is that there tends to be that misunderstanding sometimes in terms of you know, their involvement in risky behavior. Anyone can be involved in risky behavior, whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous. So, and I think we also have to kind of trouble certain language around like risky behavior, because what makes something risky, right? And how are folks actually into risk because of a lack of access to like comprehensive sexual health education and services. So this is again another you know, great opportunity for us to continue to educate, and just like our last person that was on, find like innovative ways to keep on spreading that information. There's also a question from Kingchella: is it normal to have jealous thoughts or feelings in a poly or mono relationship, and how do you get over it? Absolutely normal. It is absolutely normal. People think that, oh, because you're in a non-monogamous relationship or setting, that jealousy shouldn't exist. It's not true. It's going to exist, right? What I have found that has been helpful is for there to be a conversation around the jealousy, because identifying where the jealousy is coming from, because is the jealousy coming from a place of, oh, there's something that I'm feeling insecure about within myself, and I need to maybe talk about that a little bit more. And maybe there's a way that my partner can help to support me when I'm having those insecure moments. Or is it coming from something that maybe my partner is doing that maybe we talked about within our negotiations that we is not a part of our negotiations, that could be bringing, like, what is the purpose of the like, what's the root of the jealousy? And some people, when they have these conversations and they continue to grow with their partners, then they might experience something called compersion. So compersion is basically when you actually experience pleasure and joy from your partner being pleasured and having joyful experiences with other partners. So that's like another beautiful thing that can come out of non-monogamy. Could you imagine just being joyous and happy because your partner is fully happy? Like, and it's also pressure off of this idea that, oh, you know, because my partner should be able to meet all my needs and I should be able to meet all my partner's needs. That's not realistic. You're not going to be able to meet everyone's needs, vice versa. So some folks experience joy knowing that their partner has someone else in their life that can meet some of those needs that they may not be able to. So yeah.
I mean, that's nice. Cool. Interesting.
Chadwick, Chadwick is like, what do you mean joy and pleasure from someone else? What?
I also want to say, I also want to say that you talk about barrier methods, but we also have PrEP. So a lot of folks are also using PrEP. It's a pill that is used to prevent the acquisition of HIV. So even with the LGBT community, we're seeing an increased use of PrEP, and so people are in different forms of relationships. They may not be using barrier methods, but they're also the chances of them using PrEP to also prevent, the risk of HIV. So I just want to also make sure that we kind of, flag that as well. That, even though, and people do disclose, and, in the event that you're seeing someone, you're on PrEP, it's important that you also disclose and let people know, get that level of comfort and safety for all involved, right?
Yeah, and
Solid point.
that in some cases, like for example, like I mentioned, right? Like you're at a play party, you know what I'm saying? And it's about to go down. Sometimes you don't get to have those like fulsome conversations, right? Sometimes they may not feel safe depending on where you're at. So there's different things that you can do for yourself, right? Like using PrEP, like using barrier methods, like open communication, education, self-testing, like so many different things, right? So yeah.
All right. I see King Chella said a request who would have asked a question. So I'm going to allow the person to come on and to see if they were going to share some more. So let me do that. So Garfield, I'm going to kick you off for a sec, right?
All right.
And Jamaica will take the hot seat in doing some of the questions to the community members. So let me see if I can go ahead and add King Chella, right, who really burnt up the comment section. And there you go.
Hello. How are we?
Okay.
Good.
We are
Good. So, my name is King Chella.
Absolutely.
I'm your favorite person, place, or thing. I'm actually a drag entertainer here within the GTA. I'm just tuning into your live, and I would love to be a part of this conversation.
nice. Jamaica, over to you. What are some questions for King Chella?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had some questions planned, King, but I feel like you really brought a good point into the conversation about jealousy, right? So, like Natty said, we know that jealousy can exist no matter someone's relationship style, relationship orientation. So I want to ask you, how do you deal with jealousy in your
Okay, so
relationship?
I feel like I'm a very novice person to be talking about this because I've never been in a relationship. However, I've had situationships. So I'm very much dealing with who's and has and he's, and I feel like the premise of this whole gathering and just like we said, life in general is communication. Like insecurities really get the best of us, and when you keep that bottled up, it just festers and becomes a bigger ball of insecurities. So whether it's, I feel like talking to your partner or even like looking into yourself and being like, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? Or even just like talking to somebody who's not a part of the situation and just like having them vent and or like venting yourself and being like, I'm feeling this way. Is this normal? Like when I ask that question, I'm like, I mean, like, I like dibbling and doubling, and like sometimes I get a little territorial, but like at the same time, like
It's doubling for me.
Sometimes I'm just like I feel jealous, but I don't want the term to be jealous because I also feel like we use that term in a very negative connotation.
And that's such a good point. Honestly, you can learn a lot from that experience, from that feeling. Jealousy is just an emotion. Like and it can actually teach us a lot. It's not necessarily it's more so how do we communicate, right? Do we do it in a way that may harm our partners or ourselves? It's really about how we can really grow from that experience of having jealous emotions that are coming up. So I really like that you
Jamaica, any questions?
I mean, I'm thinking about dating and I'm thinking about my experience of dating and listening to everybody. And there's little big thing that happened that we're not touching on at all, right? So I want to ask you, King, how did the pandemic, the lockdown impact your dating experience?
See, I'm gonna a little snippet of my life. So once upon a time, not long ago, I was a hoe. Okay?
in it.
I'm admitting it, and I did the shit. Okay? And then with COVID happening, obviously we couldn't meet each other and do the things. I mean, some people could, but like illegal. Anyways, it it forced this idea of online dating onto me more. But I've also like I remember sitting there and being like, why am I on these apps? Why am I here? Do I really need to be on these apps? Like, and like it took me a long time to be like I like the attention, but like I can give my attention to myself. I want love, but I can give that love to myself. And for a long time, people would ask me like when I catch up with my best Judies, they're like, so are you dating anybody? I'm like, I'm dating myself. Like, why is dating another person a priority? Like, I love myself. I think I'm sexy. And I think the pandemic has really influenced the way I've interacted with dating on a sexual level, an intimate level, and an emotional level.
Nice. That was deep. That was Natty, do you want to shoot
I mean,
King Chella?
that was giving me very solo polyam vibes. Like I am my primary person, and that is that. I give the primary love to me first, and that is that. That exactly is what that was given. Yeah, and I thought about the idea of solo polyamory a lot during the pandemic as well too. So because it was that opportunity, like, well, we were pretty much forced into it to be to ourselves and and very like internal and everything else. So it was an opportunity to prioritize myself and not other individuals. So yeah, I really love that. And this is again, right, how we may enter into non-monogamous relationships, situationships, whatever you want to call it. We may enter into those experiences in different ways, but we don't necessarily. It's not static. It's not fixed, right? We may not necessarily stay in how we act, right? We may go through it and decide that maybe one way of polyamory is not for me. Maybe this way is better for me. Maybe it's not for me at all, right? We may move and ebb and flow. So I know folks who identify as amorous. I only have one partner, right? And that's just for now. That's how they feel. They feel good with one partner, and that's that. But that doesn't change that they are capable of having multiple loves. So there's always ways in which we're growing in this experience. So yeah, love everything, love it all.
Yep. All right, King Chella, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to hop. I'm seeing so many requests in the chat here to join. So I'm going to jump right into it. I'm Natty, and let me just grab the first person that I'm seeing here, right, and just keep the conversation going. All right.
Hey everybody.
So over to you. Hello.
Jonesy, also known as Aramis. That's my first name. Some people call me Jonesy. Yeah, I love the conversation you guys are having. I just want to shed a little light. I'm a little nervous. I don't really do public speaking, but I just want to add my little insight if I can.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just feel like I want to touch on something King was talking about with the jealousy in terms of being non-monogamous. I find that like from young, we're conditioned to believe in this happy ending, this fairy tale of being with one person. And I feel like that in itself causes so much jealousy to see someone giving affection to someone else or to see someone interact and smiling. Even just a smile with someone else can get you so jealous because you're thinking like, what am I doing wrong? You know, sometimes people are going through hard times in relationships and, you know, you might go out with your partner, you guys fight that night, someone approaches your partner, especially in the gay community. Oh my God, that's so common. Someone approaches your partner and they're trying to talk to your partner and your partner's entertaining it because they know it's like, you know, get a rise out of you. And I find that like, if you have the self-control, you have to remember like who you are and what you have to offer to the table. It doesn't matter about no one else at the end of the day. Like people, you know, people feel what they feel regardless of how good you might love them, how good you might be with them. Like they're gonna do what they want to do. They're gonna love who they want to love, and they're gonna. Some people crave toxicity over like a companionship, and that's so crazy to me. Like, you know, so I don't ever think it's like about you. I think it's more like a projection of them and what they want. I don't think it's more so about like what you want or how you should feel. So I just find that a lot of times with jealousy, like we get caught up in our own head thinking and like dwelling on stuff, but like I don't think that should always be the case. I don't think that should be the case at all. Like you have to know yourself and know what you have to offer in any relationship, whether friendship, whether partnership, whether it's a polygamous like setup, you know what I mean? So that's just my little tea for that.
Mm.
You're not lying, and you're sparking a question in me, right? So you're talking about knowing yourself and knowing what you want. So it's kind of bringing me to the concept of boundaries, right? How do you navigate that with one partner,
And
let alone multiple
that's
partners?
another part where I think like narcissism comes in. I feel that people want to set their boundaries and don't want to consider other people's boundaries, if you know what I mean. And I think open discussions, understanding one another really plays a part of like who you should date and why you should date them. You know what I mean?
Cool.
But
Yeah, definitely. Um, have a conversation around, you know, when you and your partner are, you know, have around like negotiations, how what you want your relationships to look like. And when we have particular boundaries, like we have to ask ourselves, are we able to those boundaries limiting the way that we want to live, and we have to be honest about that with our partners, right? If it's not a match, so there's things that we can come to an agreement and say, you know, these are the agreements on, and we can identify where there's areas where you may want to engage. I don't agree with that. Hey, are we able to come to that medium, a place of compromise, or are we not able to? This is like non-negotiables, right? So even going into you may not have all that information right away onto the relationship. Okay, a lot of these things you're probably going to learn along the way that you may have one type of agreement or agreements, and once you've experienced, like, that don't work for me, or you something else that you didn't think about, and you're like, wow, I didn't even think about this as a again, get back to keywords, open communication, and that it's constant, right? Because the boundaries and the negotiations that we have in relationships continue to ebb and flow within all of these experiences. So, yeah.
very
So much that. Yep. Yep.
Tea was
All
spilled.
right.
and I also wanted to just also talk about that was something I wanted to talk about too. A lot of people are talking about monogamy. I find sometimes it's less risky because I find with monogamy, a lot of partners go behind people's back. I find that, you know, with dating apps, even if you're not dating someone, just engaging in that culture itself is risky in itself, and a lot of due diligence. I find that it's just a stigma around non-monogamy and the risk factor. Like, there's risk in everything you do, so I just find that to say like, oh, it's risky. No, chances are you're being open with your partner. You're testing yourself because you're comfortable with yourself. Like, a lot of people go on Grindr, they'll meet up with a DL person who would never check themselves, who would never go get checked because they're too scared to, who are dating a woman, so, you know, they don't even want to get checked to bring that bad news home. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's things. So let's not do that. But
I totally agree.
You're going to be you have some type of you're safe against all things. That's not necessarily the case, right? There's a lot of folks who probably are monogamous who shouldn't be. Just saying, you know.
Just
Even
they're just calling themselves that,
who operate those monogamous relationships. In the non-monogamous relationships, because they have been taught that that compulsory, that you shouldn't want, you should be satisfied with just one, and if you want to try and have others, you're behind someone's back, and that's all rooted in the patriarchy and this idea of owning people like we're property. It's all so
powerful, Natty. Powerful. But I have one more person that I want to add really, really quick. But thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you hit really, really, really good points. I really appreciate it.
you.
no, thank you.
Yes, no problem. All right. So let's add the final one because we're almost ready to wrap. It is 8:57, and so we're adding our last number, and let's see. Wow, hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? How are y'all?
We're good.
Hello.
Jamaica, any questions? Natty?
Yeah. I feel like we've went all around the world with this conversation, and I'm so grateful that everyone's chimed in. But I'm also thinking to myself about the misconceptions and the stigma. And I asked myself, where did I first hear about this concept of polyamory? So I ask you, our new speaker, our new viewer, when did you first hear about this concept?
My first time hearing about polyamory, it was in university actually. I was attending this like queer and trans service group, and I came across someone who introduced themselves and they were talking about their experiences with polyamory. And that like blew my mind because I had no idea, like no connection to that concept until it was like, you know, I could see it in front of me. Yeah.
That's much better than my experience of having seen Sister Wives on TLC. Right? Yeah. That stereotypical mess. But that's okay. So, I mean, since Sister Wives came out in the, early to mid 2000s, have you seen any change in how people discuss polyamory?
A lot of my experiences come from like engaging with polyamorous people like in the Black, queer, and trans community. So I have like a very different perspective than the like white heterosexual like Sister Wives dynamic. So I would definitely say things have changed like from those two like viewpoints of polyamory, in the sense that it's for me, it's kind of a commitment to choosing your partners, not because of like what they do for you, for myself, of course, not because of what they do for you, but the relationship that you're able to create together, like the experiences that you're able to have, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think, for me, that's why I have been like really interested in engaging in polyamory, because of that viewpoint of like, even though my partner could be with literally anyone else in the world, they choose to be with me, and I choose to be with them. You know? Yeah.
That's so sweet. We all felt that. And that actually brings me to my final question. What has been a joy that being poly has brought you?
I think honestly, the mindset change for me, like going from like monogamy into polyamory, like while my experience with polyamory was like, you know, rather young, because I am young in general, my experience of monogamy was coming from a very like 16 mentally ill sort of place. So I think the journey into polyamory for me was very much an exploration in healing, an exploration in like choosing community and like trying to figure out like what exactly do I need in my relationships and from my relationships, and then what do I have to offer to other people, and being very real and like raw about that, because it's not entirely on me to provide everything for everyone. So I can actually show up like authentically in like what I can provide and what I choose to provide, and vice versa.
Nice, nice. I
Thank
That
love
was
you.
beautiful.
yeah, what a way to wrap. And so I really enjoyed that. And so thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask Garfield to jump back on and then just ask all the members here just to give their final feedback.
Yeah, thank
So
you for that beautiful, like everything you shared was so beautiful. And it
Thank you.
touched me, and it just goes to show that there are like these beautiful experiences within the Black queer community around
Mhm.
non-monogamy and open relationships and polyamory and all different dynamics. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Take care.
and so Jamaica, what are your final comments? What did you think of tonight? Oh, time just went by
Wow.
just like that, right? But what
Yeah. I thought it was great. I love to hear so many different viewpoints. And I love that we got to touch on so many different aspects of like this really big topic of polyamory, open relationships, sexual health. Like, I love to even just gather with this many Black folks, this many Black queer folks, and share ideas. And I just thought it was beautiful. So thank you
of
for allowing me
course.
to moderate.
And I'm gonna say Natty for last. And so Garfield should be hopping on any second now. And so Garfield, what are your final words? What did you think about tonight? How was it?
I think there was a lot of rich conversations around, the difference between monogamy and polygamy. I think again the choice it becomes a personal choice, right? So I think based on your individual preference, I think you would decide whether what works best for you. I think as well the I see a theme that came out of the whole dialogue was like about having honest communication. I think there's also this sense around mutual respect. I think there's also consent, which is also a critical piece in any relationships. And I think as well, in terms of like the whole formulation in terms of how do you protect yourself but also protect your partners, and recognizing that there's an advancement in terms of like the sexual health resources and supports that are available. That's also something that people also consider as part of entering these relationships. And going back to the whole thing around open conversation and consent, which are all the critical components, for all, involved. So, yeah, I think this is really rich, and I think, the opportunity we could go on and on, but it's a start, and I think I really enjoy, tonight's session, and I look forward to seeing what's in the pipeline.
Nice. Thank you so much, Garfield. Natty, close us out. How was this for you tonight?
Honestly, this was such a beautiful experience. I always get real turned up talking about this stuff. So, of course, we went over time because, but I mean, I feel like we could do a part two. But anywho,
Yes.
I'm so, I'm just so overjoyed for all of the folks who came on and, shared their own experience points. I think we were able to have a lot of great discussion and, dispel some of the myths, speak to some of the misconceptions. And ultimately, it all boils down to just having, again, that open and honest communication. And also to just being aware of the resources that are available to you for you to be in the relationship style of your choice, whatever. So, knowing places ACCHO and Black Cap and ACDR and all of the different organizations that are, you know, provide culturally comprehensive sexual health education resources, safer sex tools, harm reduction tools, all of these different things that you can incorporate into your open relationships, into your non-monogamous practices. And yeah, I'm just so overjoyed and just really thankful to be a part of this and to be a host here. You know, I do want to acknowledge that there are things that we didn't get to. And you know, so if folks want to send like me a DM, feel free. If you want to continue the conversation a little bit, I'm open to that. And just want to thank everyone again for viewing, for their participation, for their. I thought everyone was just really amazing and respectful in the chat. Like, it's really cool and really like here to learn, and that's really what this is all about, right? Demystifying and releasing the taboo. You know, not making this taboo anymore, but making it like, you know, we talk about all of the things. So yeah, thank you again so much, Joe, and Black Cap and ACDR, and just thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Natty, love. Thank you, Jamaica. Thank you, Garfield. All three of you were beautiful. I could not have done it without you. And I mean, special shout out to all the persons who took the time out to join, and especially those who came on live and shared their experience, their lived experience. We really, really learned a lot from you. And I just want to big up Team ACCHO, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. My director, Nangio, you have my manager, Karel, and of course, my co-worker, Etsy, and Giovanni, volunteer. Thank you. Thank you for all the members of my friends, all the friends from Black Cap, right, who actually came. A lot of persons came on. Nick, we see you in the comments. Jason, we see you in the comments as well. And so, big shout out. Now, I realize that some people came in late, and you don't have to worry. We will be posting and sharing this live, and so you can always go back and watch it and be edutained by it. And so, Mark, you will have an opportunity to view it. So, thanks again, everyone, and part 2 will be coming up. All right, so look out for the posters. Follow ACCHO's page, and so you can get the latest updates on the different events that we're having at the next After Dark chat. Thank you so much. It was indeed a pleasure having each and every one of you. Blessings. Have a good one.
Bye.